You just got to see me through another day. My body's aching and my time is at hand, and I won't make it any other way. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I've seen sunny days that I thought would never end. I've seen lonely times when I could not find a friend, but I always thought that I'd see you again.
Good evening, everyone. This is Pastor Michele from Shades of Grace. And Jimmy's here on the other side of the camera. I don't know how much I'll get Jimmy involved today, but I know he's smiling to keep me smiling. There's always things going on here at Shades of Grace, so we may have some interruptions while we're trying to video this, but if we do, just bear with us. I'm continuing my series with Healing Gifts for the Grieving Heart. And I realized that up until now, a lot of what I've been doing, especially like last week, the isolation checklist, isolation well-being checklist, if any of you were watching or if you want to go back, and that deals with a lot of what I call the externals. Like when we're grieving, we've got external things we take care of, and we have internal things that we take care of. And for some people, the external things happen very quickly and easily, and organizational things, management things, just anything like external. But internal things generally take everyone a lot longer, and that depends on a lot of things, and God takes all of us through this in an entirely different, different timelines. So externals are things that are easier to manage. You can measure their progress. You can see tangible results usually. The internals are much more sensitive. They're emotional. A lot of times they involve memories. Oh, they're stressful sometimes. They're like a roller coaster ride. They are challenging to keep a real good perspective on because they're all over the place. And sometimes they're pleasant, and sometimes they're unpleasant, sometimes there's regrets. Just a lot of things that kind of rumble inside of us. That's why I refer to them as the internals. And so I thought about what we're doing in the Zoom group is we're keeping gratitude journals. And this was prompted by a couple of articles that I found a couple of years ago, and then I used them this past year during the pandemic. But they were scientific research studies that were done at the University of California in San Diego's medical school, University of Kentucky, University of Utah, and all these studies were all put into this one article. And the article was to show the health benefits of having a gratitude journal. And the participants in these studies kept gratitude journals for about 8 weeks, and then there were some measurable health results that came about from this study. And so some of the things among those listed were that gratitude can lower blood pressure, it can improve heart rate and reduce cardiac risk. Gratitude can improve your immune functioning, reduce inflammation, reduce dietary fat intake, can lower stress hormones, can reduce the effects of aging on the brain, and can sometimes increase different hormonal responses to improve relationships with people. So these were the results after 8 weeks of keeping a gratitude journal in these university schools of medicine that did this study. So then I thought about all the times in the Psalms when if you scan through, and there's too many to even mention, because the Psalms are kind of a record that tell us how great and powerful God is in our lives. and they recount what God has done in the past, and then his promises for us currently and in the future. And the Psalms also remind us that God imparts blessings to us on a daily basis. And if you go through the Psalms, you'll see why there's too many for me to even mention them, because they all deal with different kinds of things. But I'll go through that again. They're a record of, and they record and tell us how great and powerful God is in our lives. And they recount, they tell the history and the stories of what God has actually done. And then they also record promises for us. And they remind us that God imparts blessings every day to us. So keeping a gratitude journal, part of that is kind of focusing on the blessings that are in our life, but also we have to keep track of the emotional things and the things that are troublesome to us also. So it's a tool. Gratitude journal is a little bit different than a regular journal, and I'll talk about regular journaling sometime also, but gratitude journal is a specific tool to recall and record how we're feeling, our emotions, the internal struggles, those internals again, and of course the blessings and the victories. And because we write them down, we can, it's a place where we can actually keep an accurate perspective on how our grieving hearts are actually doing, how they're moving along. For example, it's not uncommon for people that are grieving, when I have first conversations with them, they might say, you know, all I do is cry all day. That's all I do. I can't put one foot in front of the other. I just cry all day. I just want to sleep and this and that. And I'll ask them, I'll say, did you cry today? And they'll have to stop and think about it. And they might even say, well, no, not really, not yet today. Well, did you cry last night? Gee, I don't remember. It just seems like I cry all the time. And you see, it's important when we're trying to connect with what God wants us to do on our grief journey and heal our hearts and to help us in our new reality that we're walking through, that we really understand and have an accurate perception of what's really, really going on. And this can be with a lot of things besides just emotions, but you may have times when you are angry that there's been a loss in your life, or you may be bitter, you might try to blame somebody or whatever. You don't want to focus on those things. So if you record those in a journal, it helps you to see the gaps, the spaces that go in between, and that's an indicator that you're making progress in those areas and that your heart is healing in those areas. I think of an example when I first came to Tennessee, and I met some people that didn't know my husband, they didn't know me, and at one point after I was here a few months, a sister in the Lord said to me, she said, you know, you're making great strides. You're really coming along. God's doing some wonderful things with you. And I said, that's really kind of you to say that. I said, what makes you say that? And she said, you were talking about your husband tonight without crying. And I never thought of that. I never even thought of that. Didn't even equate that with anything. And she said, all the other times you've talked about him, you've broke down crying. And that doesn't mean that I don't love him and I didn't love him and I don't remember him, and it doesn't mean any of those things. It just means that I'm moving on to another level of understanding and acceptance about my loss and my new reality. But I thought, if I was keeping a gratitude journal at that time, that would have been something I would have entered in that gratitude journal. This was noted today that I didn't cry when I mentioned Justin's name. So those kinds of things help us with benchmarks and help us so that we don't fall into the deception of thinking like, well, all I ever do is cry, or all I ever do is stay home, or nobody ever calls me, or I never see anybody, nobody ever asks me to go anywhere, I'm lonely, those kinds of internal struggles that are real, and they're real, and they're genuine, and they're the things that keep us isolated, like I talked about last week. So I found a wonderful quote that we all wrote in the front of our journals this week. And the anonymous quote says, begin your day with, quote, I get to mentally instead of I have to thought process. Say that again. This isn't the whole quote, but I'll say it again. Begin your day with an I get to mentality instead of I have to thought process, whatever it may be, because we often address our opportunities as stress, but they're actually, in fact, blessings. And it's all about perspective and keeping that perspective. In other words, when I get up in the morning, it's not, oh, I have to, and then you go through this whole, to-do list, but I get to do, and it's a list of opportunities that you get to do. And that puts us on a whole different track for the day. I think it puts us in a much more positive way to look at our circumstances and what we have to do. Psalm 27, and this is a paraphrase, but I loved this. Psalm 27 talks about waiting, hoping for, and expecting the Lord. And it tells us to be brave and to let our heart be stout and enduring. And I looked at that word. This is kind of a modern interpretation of it. And I said, stout. How do you describe stout? And I started looking at it, and I started thinking about it, and then I shared it with the Zoom group, and they had some ideas they contributed to also. But stout shows strong character. It demonstrates grit. It's uncompromising. It's determined. And it's purposed. And all of those things have to do with journal keeping and being able to do this. Now, we don't keep these gratitude journals necessarily every single day. Like, that could be burdensome. That could become have to. It could become one of those things that weighs us down. And that's not what it's for. It's when those things come to mind and you feel like something's changing or something's different. And I'll read to you what some of the prompts are in the gratitude journal. But it's a place where you can be purposed and you can be determined about recording and recalling the things that God is doing to bless your life, the victories, even the things you're still struggling with, but maybe not struggling with them as much as you were last week. So that you can make a comparison and you can actually see that progress, whereas emotions are so difficult to actually measure them. And this is a tool that helps you to measure them. So the prompts that are in our journal, Jimmy's going to put a cover of the journal and the inside page at the end of our talk tonight, because we have these at the church. If anyone's interested, we're willing to give them out to you. I can meet with you, we can talk about it, but they've been wonderful, and I have some comments that some of the folks that are on Zoom have given me permission to share anonymously. So the prompts, the components and prompts are very, very simple. Every day is the same page. It says, today I am grateful for, and then it leaves some lines. Reflecting on yesterday, what went well and what goals I accomplished. Today's self-care goals, and we talked about self-care last week quite a bit. But again, emotional self-care, think about it in terms of that. And affirmations that you're declaring for today for yourself. And so some of the things that people commented on in their own words in the Zoom group, and they sent them to me on email and things like this. I mentioned this before, but I cry all the time. And then later on, going back and seeing, no, I didn't cry this morning. I didn't cry yesterday. when you look at today's goals, yesterday's goals, and what you're declaring for today. And I'm not picking on crying is a very healthy thing, and I will talk about that one of these evenings as well. But there's very scientific reasons that crying and tears are very healthy for us, and they help heal our heart as well. But it's something that everyone usually goes through. But and the idea of no one calling me or contacting me, maybe in some of those prompts you might want to reflect on yesterday. 3 people contacted me. Someone asked me to go out to lunch. I called somebody and we're going to do this together or something like that. So those kinds of comments are really important. One of the comments was to add a scripture and to see how God is working and affirming that throughout your day. And in her own words, she said, I see God's handiwork and affirmation through the day. Amazing, isn't he? And someone else wrote, I take my meds and I breathe. That person is currently diagnosed with a physical disability that affects her breathing. Another person in the group has some severe physical limitations and may be looking at surgery right now. And they wrote in their journal, I'm hoping to get to the externals. She wants to just get to the externals. She can't even do a lot of physical things around her home. Another comment was, my home was peaceful and calm. That's getting in touch with your emotions. Maybe you think, oh, there's nothing but chaos in my life and in my house. And this person recorded and now can go back and see that there was peace and calm in my home that day. Grateful for God who woke me up to live another day. And we take that for granted sometimes. We don't know. I just had a dear friend of over 40 years die in a car accident in upstate New York. We don't know. We have no idea. So to be grateful that God woke us up for the day and we have another day to live out. And we have another day to get to do things, not have to do things. Let's see. I grew in my faith. I'm trying to control my anxiety and depression. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. This gets me to memories. Memories are one of those internal things. That's not a measurable thing necessarily. And I thought about this. I mentioned it last week when we were talking about, I mentioned memories, and I said, sometimes I felt like I'm the only one that even knows about this particular thing, and maybe about my husband or something he and I did, and if I forget this memory, it's going to be gone. It'll just be gone. And so I thought more about that, and I said to communicate with somebody else who maybe did share that memory with you. Maybe there is a friend that knows that, and when that memory comes up and maybe you're sad about it because you think nobody else even knows this, that you can talk it over with somebody else and you can revisit that, and you can actually have like a joyful time recounting that incident or whatever, and it gives you then a new memory to think about with that. You can share it with a family member, so you have other people that can remember that memory with you that you can talk about with. So when you feel sad about it, you've got someone you can discuss it with that can bring some light to it and some joy to it. You can always write about it. All of these things help to soften that emotion of sadness or regret, or maybe that it's going to just dissipate and no one will ever even know that happened. So these are some things, these are tools. These are not necessarily cures, but they're tools along the way that we can use. And all of these things that I've been talking about all contribute together to healing our grieving heart. So again, Jimmy will post the prompts on the end of the program tonight. So if you have questions, you can reach me at the church. We can talk, we can visit. If you'd like to join Zoom, I can get your email and send you an invitation. There's lots of things that we can do to reach out to you, even though we're not doing a lot of in-person groups and in-person services and things. So please don't be isolated. Don't think you're the only one going through this. There's lots of folks out there that are having lost loved ones, lost jobs, lost homes, lost experiences, many losses that we're going through, health, through the pandemic, not necessarily attached to COVID at all. So, and then of course COVID related losses in addition. So Jimmy, I don't know, I didn't give you much time today, but is there anything else that comes to mind, or anything that actually spoke to you tonight?
Yeah, there's one thing I didn't want to interrupt you.
Oh no, you can
on a roll.
you can interrupt me though. That's okay.
But when you were talking about, I was thinking, our mind is very powerful in our well-being. If I tell myself I'm sick, I feel terrible, I feel awful, even though I do feel terrible, it just makes you feel worse.
Yeah, it does.
If you tell yourself I'm okay,
I'm going to be okay, or I'm going to be okay.
I'm strong. And be determined. Makes a world of difference. So there is a lot of power in that, and that's where the gratitude comes in as well.
And being stout.
Being stout. That's
being stout,
right,
being determined, being uncompromising, having that grit, having purpose, knowing that God can heal you, knowing the doctors can heal, knowing that there's a lot of things that can help whatever's sick in your body or whatever. Because we don't want to be in denial.
Right.
We don't want to pretend that it's not happening. But at the same time, there was something we talked about, we'll pick up on last week, when I had mentioned about showering and dressing and looking nice during the day and stuff. Afterwards, Jimmy and I had a conversation. You want to share about that?
I say, my day starts with a shower. If it doesn't start with a shower, I get nothing done. But we were also talking about the PJs, how the PJs can really just, it's great to rest and be comfortable.
Relax,
and all,
yeah.
But time and place. But if I were to take a shower and be energized and ready to go, if I go put my comfy shorts on and one of my old rock and roll t-shirts, I'm done. That's just, and getting dressed up. And who are we talking about? Was it your grandmother?
My mother-in-law.
Your mother-in-law.
My mother-in-law,
that's right.
yeah.
That's always dressed and ready to go. And that's kind of the mindset that I have to get in sometimes. Even if I don't feel like it. Once I get dressed and you kind of play that part out and you get going, you find out that it wasn't that bad really anyway. You get busy, especially here at Shades of Grace. My goodness.
Never a dull moment. I know.
It will take your mind off of anything.
Take your breath away.
Yes.
Take your breath away. Yeah. I also think about colors that we choose to wear. I know I have colors that empower me. There are colors that I feel like I'm more on top of the world when I wear red. People have commented about that. Yeah. Navy blue is another power color.
If there's any men watching this, I think that's a woman thing.
It could be.
Because I don't have that.
I don't know. If you go to those, those speaking courses and things like that, they probably tell you what color jacket and tie to wear, and that kind of thing. But certain colors attract people, certain colors repel people. There's a lot of different things like that. But I think there are things little things like that too that play with our emotions too. Yeah. And so there's just a lot of things going on. So there's no question that you can't call the church and ask. There's no incorrect question. There's no question that anybody's going to think is, every question is valid. Every feeling is valid. We're here to help you to navigate and give you tools and resources to help you on your journey through grief. So thanks for joining again tonight. Share this with your friends. You can share. You can repost it on your own Facebook page. I do that also. Because I have folks that maybe don't follow the Shades of Grace Facebook page, but they follow mine. So just however this information is useful, please don't hesitate to get in touch with us. So thanks for joining in. And it's nice to know where you're joining in from. If you want to put that in the comments, that's interesting too. So thank you very much. Good evening.
See you somehow one more time again now. Thought I'd see you one more time again. There's just a few things coming my way this time around. now. I thought I'd see you, I thought I'd see